afternoon. My name is Sarah Truman, and I'm happy to introduce the next presenter to you today. Nicole Gugliotti, I said it wrong. Gugliotti was born and raised in Florida and had her first clay experience in high school at the age of 14. She attended Florida Atlantic University for her BFA and then went on to the University of Florida for her MFA. She is the founding member of the Socially Engaged Craft Collective with 3 of her friends, and she is currently based in Olympia, Washington, and is the Instruction and Classroom Support Technician in the Art Department at South Puget Sound Community College. So please help me welcome Nicole.
All right, hey everyone. So yeah, I guess we can't block the aisles, but I know that everyone can't sit for a long period of time, so I just ask that folks helping out with that, just make sure to be respectful if anyone needs to get up for something for their comfort. Before I get started, I just want to acknowledge that we're currently standing on traditional Dakota territory, and here we go. So I'm Nicole Clay Dork, not a financial planner of any sort. I'm a ceramic artist and I just turned 40. I've lived a pretty nomadic life in pursuit of art. I, like many of you, have made kind of a lot happen with very few resources, and I'm no stranger to the hustle. But I've recently entered a season of my life where I've started to think about future Nicole and have panicked a little. So I'm not a natural saver, and I have a healthy fear of money, banks, and the word investment until just a couple years ago. Any job that I had that said, oh, do you want to do this retirement thing? If it wasn't, it was always an option. I said, no, I'm good. That sounds terrible. So I started watching YouTube videos. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. They're kind of the best. And I read a few books. They're a little harder. But the cool thing is that they all pretty much say the same thing. So I'm going to share with you my experience of getting a handle on my personal finance. It's certainly a work in progress, planning for retirement, and some of these universal tips I've picked up along the way. Now, you should totally research this stuff on your own before making any financial decisions. I mean, don't trust me necessarily, but a reason I'm sharing this info with you is just to help you get over the fear of taking action. So that's what I experienced. While there will always be more to learn, like the more you learn, the more you know you don't know, the actual first actions are pretty universal. So I hope that after this you'll feel empowered to look at some of this stuff and take some of those actions. So first of all, due to inequity in our society, women, people of color, disabled folks, queer folks, and fat folks will make a fraction of each dollar that a person with more privilege could make, and Black, Latinx, and indigenous folks have access to less generational wealth in the US. Also, I'm absolutely not working with the assumption that you've all got buckets of money and you're just buying too many lattes. Quite the contrary. I assume that most artists are juggling multiple jobs, subsidizing their practice, and making a lot happen with way less money than you would think is possible. So just know, whether you're coming from a working class background like me, or you grew up with much less or much more financial stability, this talk is for folks who've struggled to save, don't know how to start budgeting or investing at all. So regardless of where your finances are right now, the different circumstances that impact them, the simple act of figuring out what you've got, what you need, and what you want can be transformative. Okay. So I made a new friend yesterday that said, you should ask everyone to kind of ground. And I was like, I don't know what that means. But I'm just going to ask everyone, for my benefit, to just take a breath and get ready. So I want to share a quick story. This was years ago, and I didn't realize at the time, but it was the beginning, the very inkling of my financial literacy. While a graduate student at the University of Florida, I had the opportunity to participate in a creative capital workshop, including a budgeting workshop with Andrew Simone. I don't remember a lot of what we talked about, but what I do remember, because he said, if you remember nothing else from this workshop, remember this, was that he had us do a budget that included everything we needed. Everything we needed to live, including all the extras. Saving for retirement, taking a vacation, buying gifts, all of that kind of stuff. And then from there, we figured out what kind of salary we needed to pay ourselves. So I wrote that number down in yearly, monthly, and weekly salary, and I placed it in my wallet. I've still got that piece of paper in my wallet, and at the time, the salary I wanted, my dream salary was $30,000. It was frankly more money than I could imagine. And a few months after graduating, I was working a couple part-time jobs, trying to sell work. And one day I looked at that piece of paper and I actually sat down and did the math. I wasn't super close, but then suddenly that number meant something, that difference. That was how many more dollars I needed to live to feel a little stable. And we all know the hustle life, right? So over the next few months, I picked up an adjuncting gig, and when I did the math again, I was nearly there. I keep that slip of paper in my wallet. I've added slips of paper with new numbers. And actually, while I was preparing for this talk, I took my income from the first quarter of 2019, I multiplied it by 4 and realized, again, I'd gotten way closer. So I want to be clear, I wasn't just manifesting this money. It's just not coming from nowhere. I have a lot of jobs right now. But it's just interesting to think that, if you know how much you need, you can be a little more strategic about getting it. And then you can make, additional decisions from there. Okay, so we're going to talk about budgeting real quick. Who has a budget? Of course, only the budget nerds came. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, well, when it comes to budgeting, and we're just gonna touch on these things. When it comes to budgeting, everyone's gonna be starting from somewhere different. You're gonna want to figure out what money is going out each month. And just to be really clear, I'm very good at ignoring that. I had no idea. If you use a debit card or a credit card, you can pull 3 to 6 months of statements and go through and manually categorize each expense on paper or a spreadsheet. It's a really interesting exercise. This will give you a good snapshot of your expenses, and it's important to go over several months because there's some things that don't show up every month. Once you know what's going out, take a look at your take-home income. Am I talking too fast? Okay, it's my habit. Okay, so if you have a salary, this is pretty easy. But if you have a variable income, it's a little more work, and I bet some of us do. So you'll want to figure out, what can you expect? And you might have to, take some action to even be able to get this number. What can you expect as a minimum each month? And then you'll want to budget with that. And then some folks will save excess money, so a really good month, they'll save excess into what's called a Hills and Valley Fund, and that will be available for them later. All right, not that it's easy, but okay. So moving on. Now, if you don't have enough income to cover your expenses, you can do one of two things. Because that's the real problem, right? If you're an artist, sometimes you just in life, you just don't have enough money. So 2 strategies, right, which are going to be different for everyone. One is to decrease your spending. So this could be really easy, less meals or drinks out, but there are more creative ways and less painful ways to cut costs. So I recommend calling around to every one of your bills and negotiating with them. You could do that every year or two. If you have an extra room in your house, you could rent it out. You could share your skills at a conference to help with travel costs. And if you don't have expenses that can be easily cut, your next strategy is to look at increasing your income. So take on a side hustle, set higher sales goals for your work, look at a similar job that might pay you more, or go for a promotion if you have a full-time job. And the goal is to get it to the point where you have more income than you have expenses. This is Edgar P. Kaolin's budget. All right, once you're clear on what's coming in and what's going out, you can set goals and be strategic. For me, it worked best to give every dollar a budget. This is also called a zero-based budget. So before I just paid the bills, which are like the fixed expenses, right? Like your rent, like you don't have a choice, right? And then maybe there'd be some money left over, like hopefully I could get groceries and like maybe like go out to eat or, whatever, buy new socks. But now I try to plan everything out ahead of time, and I give every single dollar a budget. So if I have some leftover money, I decide where it's going, all right? This doesn't mean I don't juggle stuff throughout the month, but as I've practiced, I've gotten better at anticipating what I'll spend each month. Then, this is the kicker, I check in throughout the month to see how much I have left. I have a fixed salary, so I like to budget by month, but it might make more sense to budget by paycheck to paycheck or week to week, whatever works best for you. There are several online apps, so you don't have to do math, which is important for me, and my favorite is everydollar.com. So getting used to a budget can be a slow process, and it can feel really restricting, but after a while, I actually found myself feeling less panic and even kind of a delight. People who are friends with me know I'm like obsessed. As I started to trust that the money was there because I'd budgeted it, so I knew it was there. I didn't have to feel that extra stress all the time. Ultimately, we're aiming for progress, not perfection. You'll still probably mess up a lot. It's been a couple of years and I still get surprises. But it's just so much less of an impact because I've been practicing. So in this budget you see here, Edgar P. Kaolin's budget, Edgar has $560. This I just had to do, so hopefully the math is right. $560 left after budgeting, and instead of just letting it sit in limbo, they give it a job. Edgar's putting all their extra money towards their baby emergency fund. So baby emergency fund, you'll want to save one of these before you start the next step, which is, if you have it, paying off debt. And then I'll talk a little more about emergency funds in a few slides. All right. Okay, so once you've got your budget going, all your bills are current, you got your baby emergency fund set aside, you should have a little extra money at the end of the month to put towards your goals. First thing you're going to want to do is pay off high interest debt if you have it. So who here has some kind of debt? Student loans, credit cards, mortgage? So it's a couple of us, so just a few. Okay. If you're in debt, you're not alone. More than a third of Americans have credit card debt, and most college graduates carry student loan debt. If you have high-interest consumer debt like credit cards, you're going to want to eliminate it first. High-interest debt is so rough because the interest rates are so high that they completely negate anything you're earning elsewhere. Credit card interest rates are straight up higher than any interest you're earning on savings, investments, or credit card rewards. So pay those things off every month. If you don't do anything else, make a plan to eliminate your highest interest debts. There are several ways to pay off your debt. Two popular ways are debt snowball and debt avalanche. Debt snowball sets you up for psychological boosts by having you pay your debt smallest to largest. So you get wins early on, and it feels good and it fuels you. Debt avalanche orders your debts from highest interest rate to lowest and saves you the most money over time. For some, it may make sense to combine methods, but basically there's no right or wrong way to pay off debt. Whatever gets you results is perfect. Once you pay off a credit card, you'll want to make sure not to run it up again. Your baby emergency fund will help with this. You don't want to close older accounts because it could impact your credit score, but bottom line, if you can't have a credit card without running it up, it's better just to cancel it. All right, so let's look back at Edgar's budget. They continue to give every dollar a job, including now putting all their extra funds towards their high interest debt in order to pay it off as quickly as possible. Okay, so let's talk about student loans. A few of you might have student loans. I do. Who knows about public service loan forgiveness? Like a couple people. It's shocking how many people don't know. Who's heard like a terrible horror story about public service loan forgiveness? Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Thankfully, there's a lot of good information online. So if you don't already know about public service loan forgiveness, you should. It's an initiative by the federal government to incentivize working in the public sector. In a nutshell, if you hold qualifying loans, work for a qualifying employer, and are enrolled in a qualifying repayment plan, after 120 on-time payments, your loan balance will be forgiven. The key word being qualifying. Okay, so one nice thing about public service loan forgiveness over other types of loan forgiveness is that you are not taxed on the amount forgiven. Not that that doesn't make those other types potentially a really good deal. Okay, so as I mentioned before, certain loans, employers, and repayment plans are required. You'll need to read the fine print on each of these items, but it's not that bad, but you have to do it. You have to look into it. If you call fedloan.org, who I believe handles all of them, they will walk you through each process, and actually I've had really good luck. They're pretty nice. I kind of feel like if you call and someone's not helpful, just like call back a different day. First of all, though, you're going to want to do the math. Thousands of dollars of debt can feel overwhelming, but as you're getting a handle on things, you might actually be able to pay your loans faster than they would be forgiven, and which could be cool. If it makes sense, though, check out public service loan forgiveness. You may have to consolidate and or switch providers, and you'll need to recertify your repayment plan each year. It's not required, but I also recommend recertifying your employment each year, because then you can see the numbers go down, how many payments you have left. Basically, I just call them anytime I feel insecure about anything. I was like planning this talk, and then I was like, wait, did I recertify yet? And then I called them. Okay. So it gets a lot of bad press. There's a lot of talk about it going away. So for folks who are currently enrolled in the program or who currently qualify, you may not remember, I sure as hell didn't, but we actually signed a contract, that master promissory note thing. That's a contract, and it outlines our access to this program. So it's unlikely that if they ended this program that we would be affected, but for any of you considering taking on more debt, you just want to keep abreast of the news. And know that it might not be an option in the future. All right, I'm going too slow. An emergency fund, so we're going to talk about emergency funds now. This is going to keep you from racking up debt, not if, but when the car breaks down, the roof needs a repair, you experience a job loss, whatever. This fund should be in a savings account, easily accessible in case of emergency, but not easy to dip into those for those of us who struggle with saving. If you're like me and you're starting from zilch, $1,000 is a good place to start. I called this my cushion, and that's because I spent so much of my life working without one. And then when I started to save more, I started calling it my couch cushion. Okay, so realistically, $1,000 isn't going to cover a lot. But so you need to decide based on your life what a good number is for you. But if you're trying to pay off debt, just be strategic. Having more in savings might feel safer, but then you've got that high interest eating away at the other end. So sell stuff in your garage, pick up shifts at the bar, make a series of couch cushion cups and glaze them rutile blue, but put together that starter emergency fund. Then, I'm so glad you guys like that. Then pay off all your high interest debt. Okay, so then debt's gone, boom. Go back to that budget, figure out how much it costs each month to keep the household going and the humans fed, and this is your bare bones budget. So let's look at Edgar's budget. They've paid off their debt, so that's several $100s off their plate each month. It's different for everyone. Most sources recommend a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. For my brain, what felt right was about 3 months of take-home pay that in an emergency could be stretched to about 6 months of bare bones expenses. And this amount could cover most major emergencies. So this is my fully funded couch cushion. Well, this is Edgar's. The best thing about the couch cushion, so just an aside, is that I affectionately call it my freedom fund as well. I have a lot of names for this thing, but you don't get stuck. If you ever feel like you need to bug out from a situation, you can. Not that that's what you should use it for, but okay. All right, sinking funds. Once you got that couch cushion funded, you might want to start establishing sinking funds. These are kind of an extension of that. It's for things that you know, you might know when and how much you'll need, like your car registration, or it might be an expense that you know is coming but don't know how much or when, like a car repair. Lots of car stuff. And then, like, I have an online bank, and it lets me have these little goals that I can just tuck money into. You can also, like, keep it on a spreadsheet, but I really like having, like, car fund, pet fund. So, all right, so check your credit score. As you're getting a handle on things, check it out. There's like Credit Karma, it's an app. You can also go to annualcreditreports.com. Your bank or credit card might give you access to your report and score. Different sources use different scoring models, usually not the FICO model we hear about, but for our purposes, this score isn't super important. You want to look at your report, make sure everything's correct, make sure there's no issues, no derogatory marks. And if there are, fix them. And then at least make sure your score is going up, or like at least not down. There's a couple of ways to raise your credit score. This is what makes up your credit score here. Payment history is the biggest component of your score. So make sure you're paying everything on time. You might want to automate payments. I just have my minimum automated, so I don't have to worry. But then I go and pay it off each month. Another quick way to get your score up fast is by paying off debt. So if you have access to, say $1,000 of debt, if you can keep the amount that you're using below 30%, great. If you can keep it below 10%, even better, and you'll see a quick boost in your score. Okay. Get ready, y'all. I know there are a lot of words for an art conference. So I want to talk about retirement. So this is going to be different for everyone. Personal finance is personal. But again, I focus on action. So a good generic goal is to invest about 10% of your income. But really invest any percent of your income. Like literally calculate 1% and start investing it ASAP. A less generic goal would be to figure out what you want your retirement to look like and work backwards. We're pretty good at that because of Kilns. So why invest? Since I've been obsessed with this topic, I've had people say to me, I won't live that long, or like the banks are all gonna go bust, or I'm an artist, I never wanna retire. And I get it. I hope that I can make work until the day I die, but if I'm being honest, I hope that future Nicole will have a chance to make work without the burden of making survival income. And perhaps more importantly, should I experience injury or illness that keeps me from working, I hope to be able to provide for myself. Some other good reasons is that we don't know if we've still got a while to go, how much or even if we'll be able to rely on Social Security. And finally, investing will give you the best rate of return, coupled with compounding interest, and over time, that's the most efficient way to grow your money. Think about it this way. We all know, maybe I actually didn't really know this, that inflation makes our dollars less valuable over time. So to put it simply, the average rate of return on investments is higher than the rate of inflation. So your average like bank account, even the high, savings account, even the high interest ones, they're still about or less than inflation. So compounding interest is our friend. It's our enemy if we have credit card debt. It's like so the enemy. But if we have savings and investments, this is basically when we earn interest on the principal. So each month your principal is worth more, and therefore it gains more interest. So interest on top of interest on top of interest. And over decades, that's a lot of money that gets made that we didn't have to do anything for, except make some smart decisions. Okay. Maybe we should all take a breath. All right, so let's talk about actually investing. So your investment portfolio all the stuff you're invested in should be diversified, meaning you got eggs in different baskets, but not with stocks, right, which is like what you always hear about. These are volatile little pieces of ownership in an individual corporation. So if it goes bust, your portfolio goes bust. But mutual funds or index funds, these are slices of hundreds of corporations, sometimes even the entire market. Bonds, which are more stable than stocks but bring less return, or than stocks, mutual funds, etc., but bring less return, they can be added as you get closer to retirement. Passively managed, or managed by algorithms, or managed by the machines, however you want to look at it. Index funds or ETFs, which are real similar to index funds, like those offered by Vanguard, statistically outperform actively managed or managed by person funds. And when you're investing, you want to match your choices to your risk tolerance. So how comfortable are you with risk, and how much risk you're advised to take in relation to how close to retirement you are? Hopefully that made sense. Okay, so you might be thinking, you said the word risk a bunch of times, but despite the ebbs and flows that are sensationalized in news, the stock market has always gone up, and when it stops going up forever, it goes up and down, but always up. When it stops going up forever, that's the apocalypse, or potentially the utopia, let's hope. But we'll have other things to think about, and our investments won't matter. So to put it very simply, you guys, I'm trying to finish. To put it very simply, investment will always carry risk, but diversification, and most importantly, time, y'all, will weather most ups and downs. Okay, so how much do I need? Some models suggest $1 million invested by retirement. Others say $100,000 for each $500 of monthly pay in retirement. These numbers depend on what you'd like your retirement to look like, whether Social Security will be a thing, and the support structures you have. There are online calculators, a bunch of them, to help you. But keep in mind, if you do a quick search, a lot of times the models telling you how much you need will be kind of highfalutin fancy people numbers. So don't be intimidated. You know, for me, I'm not banking on Social Security or inheritance, and I'm getting started a little late, so I'm choosing to funnel as much as I can. But keep in mind, if you're younger and you start earlier, every dollar you put in is going to bring more compounding interest and be more valuable. So that's pretty cool. Ultimately, though, something is better than nothing, and now is better than later. Okay, so I have to start investing in retirement like yesterday. Nicole has 2 minutes to talk. This is what I would do. If you have access to a 401k employer match, take it. Put as much money as you need in to get the match. That is free money and 100% return. That's higher even than credit card interest. Next, kill any high interest debt, because that's taking away your money. Next, once you've gotten your match, move on to an individual retirement account, which you can get on your own. If you've still got money, then go back to that 401k and max it. Or do whatever's easier, but this is just what I would do. If you're self-employed and you don't have access to a 401k or something, you can look at SEP IRAs or solo 401ks. These are for self-employed folks, and their amount that you can contribute each year is a little higher. Okay. These are all tax-advantaged retirement accounts, and there are other types of investment accounts, but I'm just going to talk about these. Tax-deferred means you'll pay taxes on this money and its earnings when you withdraw in retirement, and it lowers your taxable income now. Tax-free earnings means you'll pay taxes on all your contributions in the present, but they'll grow tax-free. So you won't be responsible for any taxes later. And these have the prefix Roth. 401ks and 403bs are employee-sponsored retirement accounts in which your contributions are tax-deferred. There are Roth-style 401ks, but they're less common. And if you are offered a match, take it. IRAs are individual retirement accounts that you open on your own. You may open them instead of or in addition to your employer-sponsored account. Traditional IRAs are tax-deferred, and Roth IRAs grow tax-free. And finally, these guys are for your self-employed folks who want to contribute more. Okay, this is your checklist, your to-do list, if you'd like it. Does anyone want to take a picture of that one? That's why the camera's up there. So many words. Okay, gonna move on. Goals and resources. Okay, quick, take your picture. I'm over time. Oh, going the wrong way? Ooh, ooh, ooh. It's animations, man. Goals. Resources. So these are some of my favorites, but frankly, there are so many. You're going to find someone who speaks your language. And then finally, that's me. And I have a YouTube channel, LOL. Check it out. Thank you so much. I wish you financial freedom.